Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and joining me today is Elizabeth Harris. Elizabeth's motto is self-care, not self-control, because food is meant to be enjoyed, movement should make you happy, and because we've all got better things to do than counting carbs or calories. Elizabeth is a certified intuitive eating counselor, a registered dietitian, speaker, entrepreneur, and co-host of the podcast Wellness Rebranded. She holds a master's degree in nutrition, health span, and longevity, and focuses her work on helping people break free from diet culture so they can lock in a more peaceful, sustainable approach to nutrition, whole health, and self-care. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so the part of your bio that I didn't go into is that you have a bachelor's degree in Russian language and Slavic and Eastern European studies. So how the heck did you end up here?
It's definitely an unconventional route. So needless to say, being a dietitian is a second career for me.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Yeah. So what led you here?
Honestly, just a passion. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I've had it since I was a senior in high school. I have been able to, positively influence it through some nutrition and lifestyle modifications of my own. I'm always super careful to say that not everyone who has an autoimmune disease can do that, but I was just one of the lucky ones. I think that experience led me to a passion for nutrition, and it just was something that I thought about for a long time and eventually just made the leap and decided to switch. But it wasn't easy because coming from a background in liberal arts and language, it has nothing to do with nutrition science. So I sort of started over.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is never easy, right? It's never easy, but I can tell by the work you're doing. And when I listen to you on the podcast, I mean, you're passionate about it. So I'm sure you're feeling like it was the right choice.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I guess I'm putting words in your mouth.
It was really stressful switching. I did it while raising 3 kids, but I absolutely love it. And I find it to be very, very rewarding work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it. So I think there's a million topics we could talk about that we both enjoy talking about and I love learning about.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to start around one of the areas that you focus on, which is signs that we need to heal our relationship with food.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how do we identify whether or not we need to heal our relationship with food? What are those big red flags?
Yeah. So I think if you don't mind, first, I'd just like to say why it matters. I think our relationship with food, I know, I'll be perfectly honest, the first time I heard it, I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, what are people even talking about? But it is exactly like it sounds, your relationship with food. And it matters because it's part of your health and well-being. There's so much disordered eating out there. There's so many people who feel like they've been battling food or their body for years or decades. There's eating disorders are on the rise, and it matters because it's part of our physical, mental, and emotional health. And it's a very overlooked aspect of nutrition. I always like to say how you eat is just as important as what you eat. And not a lot of people talk about it or think about it that way. So I just would love to just get that out there. But then in terms of signs that your relationship with food may need healing, I mean, there are a bunch, but we can go through some of them. So if you are someone who's been through that dieting cycle over and over again, you've jumped in, tried different diets, may or may not have lost weight, and then fell off, let's say, and sat with that guilt and shame and stress for a while, then jump back into another diet, and you're, constantly either feel like you're on a diet or off a diet, or your weight is yo-yoing up and down frequently with all of those things. That would be one sign that your relationship with food might need healing. If you are someone who feels a lot of guilt or shame about your eating, so either you're constantly feeling guilty for what you do eat, or feel like you have to eat certain things in secret because you don't want people to judge you, or have a lot of, anxiety about eating, is this the healthy thing, right? Or what if I'm eating the thing that's not considered quote unquote healthy? That would be another red flag. I think if you do not trust yourself around certain foods. So it's really common for people to say to me, oh, I just don't buy, Oreos or ice cream or XYZ food because I don't trust myself to have it in the house. I'll just eat the whole thing all at once. Or if it is in the house, I can't stop thinking about it. Like it's just on my mind constantly. That would be, for me, another, kind of sign that your relationship with food might need healing. If you have a lot of rules about your eating, usually they come from dieting or diet culture. So, like I can't eat carbs, or fat makes you fat, or I can only eat this many calories, or I'm only allowed to eat at this time of day, or if I'm going to eat this food, I can only have this many bites, and I have to go make sure I go spend 30 minutes on the treadmill that day. If you have a lot of rules like that around eating, that's a potential sign.
I love the rules one. I wanted to dig into that anyway, because I know that sometimes we don't even realize that we're living by those rules, right? We have these things that, whether we've just been ingrained in us for all the years or all the cycles of whatever we've done to try to lose weight, get in shape, whatever we were calling it.
Yeah.
And we get off that plan, but somehow these things are still following us.
Yeah.
So how do you start to unwind that?
Yeah, such a great question. And you're so right that a lot of times we don't have any idea that we have these rules. It's so common for people to come to me and say, gosh, I've even been trying to eat intuitively. I've been trying to break away from diet culture, and I didn't realize how many hidden dieting rules I still have. I actually just created a free guide around that. If anyone wants it, I'll be happy to share it with your audience, like identifying your hidden food rules and mindset patterns that might be keeping you stuck. But in terms of how we unwind it, I think there are many, many layers to it, but some of the big ones are, first of all, just looking at your history in diet culture and with dieting, like looking at it with fresh eyes. We're really told from diet culture that, if you tried a diet and you lost weight and then you regained the weight, that was your fault, right? That you did something wrong. It's not true. There's biological, physiological, and psychological reasons why that happens. Most diets are set up to fail from the beginning, but we internalize it and think it's our fault, right? I didn't have enough willpower. I didn't have enough self-control. I didn't want it badly enough. And there's a lot of shame associated with that and heartache. So first one is just getting the facts about dieting, understanding those biological, psychological factors that I just talked about, and how it's really truly not your fault. And also the vast majority of diets fail long term. So first we want to do that, is like really look at your dieting history with fresh eyes. And then it's really honestly starting to notice how many food rules you have, right? Just as you're getting ready to make your food decisions, or as you're eating, becoming aware of your thoughts. Are you automatically tabulating calories and points? Are you thinking, oh my gosh, like this is so bad, I shouldn't be eating it? Just really starting to notice those thoughts. And then as a dietitian, there's a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it myth busting, or like record setting the record straight that goes on, of like helping people identify, okay, well, what is the nutrition science and what's just a diet culture myth, or what's just a dieting rule that, really isn't necessarily helpful or accurate nutrition science. And then it's really, once you see how many of these rules you may have, once you understand what they are, once you've gotten a little bit of unbiased, neutral nutrition education about, which of those things may even be true or not true, once you've started to understand is, a lot of times I'm helping people understand, well, why does it matter? Why does it matter if you're thinking of a food as in terms of like good or bad or healthy or unhealthy? And when I can explain to someone, here's why it matters, and here's how it's probably impacting your well-being, but also your eating behaviors, then you're so much more equipped or better positioned to start to let them go. And then it's really helping yourself reframe how you think about it and challenge those rules and intentionally start to let them go and replace them with more neutral, supportive, positive thoughts that help you have a healthy relationship with food. And I think the other aspect of it is most people don't even realize that if you're following those rules, right? If you're in your head thinking about how many calories you're allowed to eat or not allowed to eat, which foods you're allowed to eat or not allowed to eat, how much sugar it has, how many grams of fat it has, whether it has the right amount of protein, you're not in your body. So what happens is that those rules, like let's just use calorie counts as a simple example. If you're in your head counting calories, well, that has absolutely nothing to do with how hungry you are, how full you are, or how that food makes you feel. And you're actually becoming disembodied, right? We are all born with the innate ability to self-regulate our eating. There's a bunch of reasons why we may lose track of that, but a lot of the biggest ones are dieting and diet culture and messages we may get from our families around food. But so layered in with challenging those food rules is actually helping you reestablish that connection to get out of your head and into your body, to listen to your body and the signals and what it's saying, so that is guiding your eating instead of calories, points, or those endless rules.
Great segue into a question I was going to ask. I'm going to look at my note for a minute because your website talks about helping people finally find peace. Talking to people who can't get past their discomfort with their weight and people whose body image and eating choices take too much real estate in their brain. So first, let me say, genius marketing on your website, because every single person that I know that's overweight, that's the biggest thing that comes up, right? That food chatter, that constant, whether it's I ate too much or I don't know what I'm going to eat next, or am I going to make the right choice? It's just constant.
Yeah.
We call it food chatter, right?
Yeah.
So based on your experience, what is the secret ingredient to help slow that down or make it go away? Because I think the secret ingredient on the street right now are all the weight loss drugs.
Yeah.
So not going in that direction.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you advise people? What's the biggest thing that you've seen work to sort of quiet that noise?
Yeah, the biggest thing is getting out of the restrictive and dieting mindset. Our brains are hardwired to want what feels off limits. And so consider what happened during COVID, for example, when we were told, oh, there's a toilet paper shortage. And then it didn't matter how much toilet paper you had in your cabinet, right? All of a sudden you felt like there was perceived scarcity. You needed to go out and get it and stock up.
Yes.
Same with, and for me, it was Lysol wipes. Like every time I wanted more Lysol wipes. So understanding those psychological impacts of what feels off limits, our brains are hardwired to respond to scarcity in the opposite. That's why scarcity-based marketing works, right? Oh, there's only 3 left. Oh, shoot, I got to get it. Yeah. So when we're approaching our food choices through the lens of dieting and restriction and I can't eat those foods, they're off limits or they're bad, we're automatically creating that scarcity reaction in our brain. And so we're more likely then to think about, to crave, to obsess over, to end up overeating those foods. You can think of it, it's known as the restrict binge cycle, but think of it like a pendulum. When you're restricting, even if it's just in your head, and that might seem weird, but if you or anyone out there, if you've ever decided what's today, we're recording this on a Thursday, right? Or Wednesday.
It's
Wednesday. If I decide today, on Monday, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to scale back on carbs. I'm going to only eat this many calories. Like, what's the first thing that I'm most likely to do between now and Monday?
Eat a lot.
Eat all the things that I plan to swear off, right? Which is totally counterintuitive, but it shows you the power of restriction in even just your brain. In that scenario, you haven't actually taken anything away yet. You've just set the intention to take it away, and automatically you pulled back that pendulum, that restriction pendulum. And then if you think about what happens when you let a pendulum go, it doesn't just fall nicely in the middle, right, and stay there. It swings way far out to the other side. That's where people are overeating and binging and loading up on all the things that you want to cut out. And so part of the process of making peace with food is actually getting out of that restrictive, scarcity-based mindset, under accepting and acknowledging that dieting doesn't work. It's probably failed you in a number of significant ways, and really flipping the switch to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. Like, I'm not going to restrict and deprive myself. I'm actually instead going to purposely try to make peace with food. I'm going to learn how to eat those foods in a way that feels good. I'm going to learn how to listen to my body. I'm going to learn how to keep it in my pantry and feel like it's no different than having a bag of baby carrots in my fridge. And it really does come from getting out of that restrictive mindset. And it's hard. I mean, I will tell you, it's hard because you're trying to do that while the world is still telling you all the same things, right? Cut back, this is bad, lose weight, all the things. And think about that pendulum, right? When you let it go, even on purpose, even when you decide, okay, I'm not going to restrict anymore, it still has to come out over here, which for many people looks like overeating or eating it in ways that don't feel good. But the difference is, like, normally what people might do without support or this practice is, like, you're off the wagon, let's say, for a while until it feels so bad. And then you're like, oh, I'm going on a diet. Like, I knew I couldn't trust myself, right? You're immediately pulling the pendulum back. So what I'm trying to help people do is not pull it back again. Sit through that discomfort, learn from it, gather feedback, practice listening to your body. And eventually, people can't see me, but my hands are like settling out down here in the middle.
Yeah.
It's so common for people to say, okay, that makes sense, but like, I just cannot imagine how I would ever get there. I've never trusted myself to keep Oreos in the pantry. And yet people get there. Like, it really does work. It's that power of restriction is so powerful.
So ingrained too. It's just so ingrained, to your point, in all the messaging. And it really is I think it's a long unlearning process.
Totally.
And I think certainly you can do some heavy work, heavy lifting, and, try to build these new concepts in a period of months. But I really think it takes years to unwind it all. Personally, that's been my experience. Yeah. I don't know what you've seen.
I totally agree. I mean, think about it. No matter how old you are, right? That's that many years of that.
The opposite behavior.
Relating to food in that way, and relating to your body in your way. Like, I typically start out working with people for about 4 months at a time. You can make a lot of headway in 4 months, but most people need much longer than that. Yeah. And even now for me, I've been doing this for years and years, and every now and then a thought will come through my head. I'm like, wow, that was like a diet culture thought. That's surprising, like, oh, there it is.
Well, that's the key though, right? You recognize the thought and you just don't give it the time of day. Yeah. You notice it, but it's gone. It just kind of flies in and out. So I think that's part of the key, right? To be able to get to that space.
100%.
But yeah, it takes a long time. And I think it's important to remind people, tell me if you think I'm right, it's not linear.
Oh gosh, no.
I know for me, it was a very in and out. It was a lot of work up front, trying to reshift some of these thoughts, get to a better spot. But certainly you have these dips where, it comes back and you kind of have to just jump back out of it and
100%.
Catch the thoughts.
Yeah, you catch the thoughts, you catch the, even like when you're trying to build a new habit, right? It doesn't just go straight up. There's going to be times when you're like, oh shoot, I reverted back to my old habits. I reverted back to my old thought patterns. But it's what you do with it when you notice that, right? And also, those are all really actually awesome opportunities to learn something about yourself, about your mindset, about your body, about your eating habits. And if you can get curious and the right questions to ask, that's actually like the intuitive eating gold to help you move forward. Um, so those missteps, I always say there's no failure when it comes to nourishing your body, but there is feedback.
Right. Why? Why did you
Yeah.
shift back? Yeah. What was going on? Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Good opportunity. So you've alluded to it a couple times with terms like neutral and being comfortable with your body and the space. And so I want to go there. So when I talked to Tara, your co-host, a couple weeks
Yes.
ago, one of the questions I asked her was, as someone that is openly a size 18, she's not in a smaller body, yet she is a very confident, sort of bucking the stereotypical fitness trainer world.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, I feel similarly about you, and not in your size, you're in a smaller body, but I think your approach to being weight neutral and all inclusive and being a nutritionist, dietitian, not focused at all on weight loss, to me sort of debunks the stereotypical nutritionist, dietitian.
Yeah. It's definitely swimming against the tide.
Right? So I guess similar question. How do you feel so confident in that approach? And I assume it's been successful, but talk to us a little bit about that because it does go against the grain.
It does go against the grain. It goes against, really much of what you're taught as a dietitian centers around BMI and weight loss counseling too, unfortunately. For me, it's two things. The first one is just the research. There is so much research and data out there about the harms of our weight-centric approach to healthcare. There's misinformation. I think, yes, there are associations between higher weight and certain diseases, but there are confounding variables that never get talked about in the research or don't get accounted for in the research. And some of those accounting variables, or one of them, for example, is the harmful effects of weight stigma. And it is built into our healthcare system, right? Almost none of us can go to the doctor without the very first thing they do is weigh you. We're often going to get a lecture. If it's someone who lives in a larger body, it almost doesn't matter what you go for. You're likely to get spoken to about your weight. And because of that, things get missed, right? Because people aren't digging hard enough. They're just going for the low-hanging fruit of, oh, it must be your weight. People delay seeking medical care because they don't want to deal with that, right? There's, guilt and stress and shame associated with that. And those things matter. They impact people's health outcomes, but they're not accounted for in the research. And when there's a huge body of research data to show that actually I hate BMI, don't use it in my practice. I think we should get rid of it. But because it's a measure we're given, I'm going to kind of talk about it for a second. And I apologize that I have to do that. But if you look at the data, actually the BMI category that is associated with the highest mortality risk is actually the underweight category, which is probably
wow, I would have never guessed that.
Shocking to most people.
Yes.
And the category that is associated with the lowest mortality risk is the overweight category, which I think is also shocking to people.
Yes.
And between them, essentially, like the range of healthy body sizes is much bigger than what we're led to believe through the BMI and the way we standard talk about it. And yes, there are statistical associations between health outcomes, but it's more at the extremes. Like think of it as like a long U-shaped curve. At the statistical extremes of BMI, then yes, weight probably plays a much bigger role than it does for the vast majority of people in the middle. So I think just kind of knowing that, but then perhaps even more importantly, I don't know if I could say one's more important than the other, but for me, I hear the stories every single day of the people that reach out to me and that I work with who have been disserved and frankly failed by our traditional weight-centric approach to health. People that have been told from the time that they were small children that they were quote unquote overweight, as if that would be like saying someone is over tall. Right? Who decided there's like a right height to be? But we did decide somewhere along the way that there's a right weight to be. And and it's harmful. And so I've seen the effects of people who have been told that from the time that they were young. I've seen the harms of dieting and diet culture. And, like, I wouldn't be doing what I did if people didn't experience the fallout from that. Their physical health suffers, their eating habits suffer, their mental and emotional well-being suffers. They end up in all or nothing patterns with food and exercise. They end up feeling like it's too hard to eat healthy, right? Or it's not working. If I make changes and it doesn't lead to weight loss, then it's not working. And and I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, but look at, like, these are all the changes you're making to your nutrition. These are all the changes you're making to your movement. This is the changes you're making to other health habits. Like, of course that's benefiting your health, but we're so accustomed to like marrying the two. So I guess the second part of my answer is I've seen the harm that it causes, and it is deep and frankly heart-wrenching. And then I've also seen the benefit of helping someone transform their relationship with food and shift the focus off of weight and onto well-being, and focusing instead on health promoting behaviors instead of the number on the scale. And it's just a regular occurrence for the people that I work with to say, wow, I never thought that I would be someone who could stop eating when I was full, even if there was food left on the plate. Or I never thought that I could have those foods in my house and like actually forget about them. Or I never thought that I would be craving vegetables instead of French fries, but like I went out to eat and I actually wanted the salad. Like I didn't choose it because I was told to or had to or I was supposed to. I genuinely wanted it. And also when people have struggled with their body image for their whole lives and then get to a point where they can feel comfortable in their own skin, that's life-changing.
I couldn't agree more. It is absolutely life-changing.
And same with exercise. I'm not a trainer, Tara is, but I do work with a lot of people on their relationship with movement and changing some of the thought patterns behind how they're approaching it. And it's so common for the people that I work with to say, gosh, like I've never been this consistent with movement in my life ever. Like I actually am enjoying it and I'm looking forward to it and it's enriching the quality of my life. And like, who am I? I never thought that could happen. And so for me, it's those three things. It's looking at the research and getting informed about the alternate sides of it. It's seeing the harms of diet culture, and then it's seeing how it transforms people's health and well-being when they move away from it.
What do you think causes the most light bulb moments when you were talking about like people saying those things and they're like, I never thought I'd be able to have the food here. And I never thought like, what do you think? Where do they have that shift the most? Do people give you that feedback? Like what was the thing that sort of locked it in for them?
I don't know that I could say that there's just one thing probably, but definitely getting out of that good, bad mindset with food and thinking of food is just food, right? Sometimes I'm a person eating chicken and sometimes I'm a person eating cake, and not taking on any moral value of that, I think is part of it. I think, and this is not an overnight or a light bulb moment necessarily, but when you start to tune into your body and like, oh my gosh, I felt hungry for the first time, or holy cow, like I actually noticed when I was feeling full. That's very rewarding and empowering. And then I think also just the idea of recognizing how much harmful conversation and beliefs and opinions are out there about body shapes and sizes. And when you can start, I always say, like, once you can see the harms of diet culture, you cannot unsee them. It's like literally impossible to unsee them, I think. And so like helping someone shift how they're thinking about their own body will also not only dramatically change how they show up in the world, but it will help them change how they approach caring for it.
Yes, I will say for me, and for those that listen all the time and know part of my journey, and I don't talk about this a lot, but I lost a bunch of weight. I still have weight to lose. But I will say for me, I do think one of the biggest shifts and one of the most freeing things was really relatively recently, like in the last year or so, where I got to the point where, yeah, I still want to lose more weight, but I'm not obsessed about it. I'm not making it the focal point of every living, breathing thing I do, because that feels unhealthy too. that feels like I'm obsessing in the opposite direction. All the healthy things that I've incorporated into my life and the change in eating patterns and all of that, that's just who I am now. And if I lose more weight, great. Yes, that would be fabulous. I'm excited about it. But I've gotten way more comfortable just in this spot, still having to lose weight, but not willing to make this be my primary focus in life, to be what I think about every day, all day. Instead, just moving forward with healthier living, more activity, being present in the moment, and living very, very intentionally. All the things. And being happy with where I am and who I am and the life changes that I've made, because I feel like I'm doing so much better. I am in a healthier place. I am in a healthier body. My mind is definitely healthier around all this stuff. And so I think, to your point, I think when people can get to that spot, the scale doesn't say the number I want it to say, or I always wanted it to say. So what? I mean, between now and dead, is that what you want to be focused on? And that's where I got to that, like, let it go. And I don't mean let it go. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Like, I don't think people should just not ever worry about it. If they really want to lose the weight, then that's okay. They really can lose the weight, but you just can't make it be your whole life. Everything you think about, everything you do, it's just an awful cycle.
Yeah, that's where we get in, like, how much real estate is it taking up in your brain? And even more for me, like, is how you feel about your body and your body image preventing you from living your life, right? Like, are you not going to the parties? Are you not taking that vacation? Are you not getting those, headshots you need because you're putting it off until you lose weight?
Yeah.
Well, then you're missing out on your life right now, sadly. And I understand there's so much pressure around weight and how we look. And so I completely understand. It doesn't matter if you're in a smaller body or a larger body. We all feel the pressure, right? It's disproportionate for people in larger bodies because they have to deal with weight stigma and fat phobia and all the harmful cultural messages, and frankly, a world that is not always set up for their bodies.
Yeah.
But everybody feels the pressure. And so I don't think it's realistic necessarily for any of us to think we're going to wake up every morning or any morning and think, I love my body. It's exactly where it needs to be. Or to think that you're ever going to maybe even lose that desire to lose weight. But it's more like, what do you do with those thoughts and those feelings when they come up?
Yeah.
Do they send you into, like a downward shame spiral and hiding and like back into the dieting cycle? Or are you able to see them, acknowledge them, feel them, and then live your life and keep taking care of your body in the way that feels good to you?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the difference between having a healthy body image and maybe one that needs healing. It's not, do you like your body? It's, how do you respond to those moments when you feel body discomfort? Because it's really unrealistic in our culture that we're not going to feel the pressure around how our bodies look.
I love the way you just laid it out. And also the point that it's not just for people that are overweight or in bigger bodies, because to your point, you can have a smaller body and still feel like when you put on clothes, you don't look a certain way or whatever, that people are judging you or whatever, right? Yeah. So I do think that's important to recognize.
Or just like the fear of gaining weight if you are in a smaller body, because if you gain weight, then society's going to have something to say about that.
Yeah.
So it's pressure.
Yeah.
It's like being in a pressure cooker. I actually heard a crazy thing as like an example of how no one escapes this. On the news this morning, there was a story. Apparently, there's some new gum out that's being marketed to teenage boys. That's like rock hard gum that's supposed to give them that like movie star jawline. And I just thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, that is how toxic diet culture is. Now there's like a whole new generation of young boys even who are out there like chewing some ridiculous gum that can probably break their teeth, trying to get some chiseled jawline because that's what the messaging says is attractive right now.
It's crazy. I mean, we need to flip-flop the whole focus. I mean, why are we so focused on these bodies, these vehicles that we walk around in?
Yeah.
As your co-host Tara was quick to remind us, there's so much more to us that has nothing to do with our bodies.
Yeah, your body is just your body, right? It's a part of you, but it's not who you are.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Any more than like your hair is who you are. It's a part of you, but the people that love you don't value you for what your body looks like, right? They value you for your personality and who you are and your heart and all the things. So it's a mindset shift of like coming to grips with that and reframing it and looking at it yourself in a new perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I spoke with Lunaria Gaia. She's fabulous. I'll put the links to that episode in the show notes for this one, but she said something that really stuck with me. And it was, if you ever get hung up on she was talking about how a lot of us get hung up on our I call them bat wings, this extra skin. I'm holding up my arms, you guys, and doing the jiggly thing. That skin there, and you kind of get hung up. And if you don't like your arms, think about how much the people that love you love your arms when you hug them.
Yeah.
And I thought about my grandchildren. Like, my grandkids never would look at my bat wings and be like, oh, I don't want you to hug me, right?
Yeah.
It's just us. We just have to change our perspective. To your point, is to reframe things, to think about it differently.
Yeah, a big part of body image healing is getting to a place of being able to view and focus on your body more for what it enables you to do than what it looks like, right? And that's a great example.
Yeah.
You can't hug your loved ones if you don't have arms, right? No matter how small they are. And like, I love to garden. Like I couldn't do that if I didn't have legs that worked or hands that worked, so it's like really shifting from form to function. Yeah, maybe I don't like the way my body looks, but can I be grateful that it works?
Right.
Or it lets me do these things, right? Maybe everything about it doesn't work optimally, but it's still my body, and I still couldn't be here with the people I love and doing the things I love if I didn't have it.
Yeah, love that. Love that shift. Well, I was going to ask you, what surprises you the most in this industry with all the work that you've been doing? I don't know if it was that ad for that gum that you saw this morning. What do you see out there that still makes you sort of scratch your head? And
I think I don't know if it surprises me at this point. I don't know that anything surprises me at this point when we talk about diet or wellness culture, but what saddens me is that it's really gaslighting, right? Like all these things often are promoted to us under the guise of health, right? Do this diet for your health, do this exercise for your health, follow these rules, like lose weight like it's always marketed as like this is the healthy thing, when actually it's usually not a healthy behavior at all. And because it's done in the service of weight loss, it's billed as health. And people with good intentions think they're doing it for their health without realizing the negative impact it's having on their physical, mental, and emotional health, which, I like to call your whole health. And I think we lose sight of that. Like yes, your physical health is one aspect of your health. It's so much more than your weight or the number on the scale, but your mental, emotional, social health, spiritual health, financial health, all of those things are part of your health and well-being. So I think it just surprises me how many unhealthy things are out there that are coming from influencers or celebrities or celebrity doctors or whoever it is that unsuspecting people now think that's healthy. And actually it's probably not.
I think that's one of the trickiest things, right? Is weeding through the information out there. There's so much. It's just inundated. I mean, you can't turn on the TV, social media, radio, whatever it is. Probably even having a conversation. Like if you're out in public with people, it's going to come up in some way, shape, or form, what you should or shouldn't be doing, the latest trends, this and that. it's really hard for most people to weed through what's garbage and what's reality.
It totally is. And especially, even sometimes like what you might think of as a reputable media source, they're still trying to get people to click on their things. So they're going to pull out the most eye-catching or salacious tidbit from any research study even. And in context, like the context and the nuance gets lost. And, I was just thinking, you asked me a while ago, like what's like an aha moment that helps people.
Yeah.
I think a big one that my people say, coming to terms and understanding that the fact that there is no perfect diet. There's no perfect way of eating. Like I have a master's degree in nutrition science. It literally doesn't exist. There is no defined diet that is the perfect way of eating for everyone. It's also why nutrition science is really hard to study because we're people, right? We don't eat in a closed laboratory setting. We eat in the real world. We all have different genetics. We all have different bodies. We all have different emotions. We all have different lifestyles. Like it's very difficult to study it. There's no perfect way of eating. If anyone is out there and they've been thinking that there is, maybe that alone can help you relieve some pressure. There is no perfect way of eating. There's probably a great way of eating for your body. And instead of searching for all the things out there, what if you flipped it and started figuring out what's the best way you can eat for your body that supports your physical, mental, and emotional well-being? And remember, there's so much pressure around individual foods. There's so much pressure around individual meals. But the most concrete information we have in nutrition science is that it's the pattern of your eating over the course of months and years and your lifetime that matters the most to your health and well-being. So rather than get caught up in like this certain superfood or that certain, treat, it's really like take a step back and look at the pattern of your eating overall. Does it align with like the pattern of eating that's supported by nutrition science? And if not, that's okay. But it shows you where the opportunities for growth are.
Love that because it ties back to what you said earlier about there's no failures, there's opportunities and information. And I think when people can recognize that there is no single plan that works for everyone. Yeah, some people have to stay away from dairy. Some people don't like to eat red meat. Some people, whatever, there's a million things. I can't think of them all, but there's a million things. But I think the point is to try things and see what works for you. How do you feel? Like some things may make you feel more bloated. Some things may make you feel more groggy. Some things may give you energy. But if you really tuned in and really pay attention to that, that ends up being what works best for you. And it doesn't really matter what you call it or if it lines up with everybody else. But I do think, to your point, that is an aha. I think really recognizing that you can sort of have your own way, but you really have to know how it fits with you. I think that's so important.
Yeah. And depending on where you're starting, you may need help, like clearing out all that diet culture noise. You may need help learning how to reconnect with your body and understand what it's telling you. You may need help understanding the why behind your eating so that you can shift those patterns. And there's no shame in that. It just is, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just like learning anything else.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you'd go to a class or you go work with somebody if you wanted to learn whatever, gardening or whatever. I mean, you'd look to someone that knows a little bit more about it than you to get some advice on it. So absolutely. I think, yes, some people can do it on their own. But if you need assistance with it, certainly find someone like yourself that can help with it. Yeah, for sure. As we start wrapping up, I want to leave you've given a lot of great tidbits. I want to leave folks with a couple things to think about. As you normally work with people, what are some of the first things you have people start thinking about? Is it getting in touch with their feelings? Like give them a few takeaways that they should start thinking about if they're in this boat still, they're still struggling.
Yeah. So many of them we will have already chatted about, but we can kind of recap and package them maybe in a different way. But the first one is just like think about your relationship with food, right? We started out the conversation talking about signs that your relationship with food may need healing. I like to talk about your relationship with food. It's similar to the foundation of a house. And if you try to build a house on a faulty foundation, that structure is not likely to stand the test of time. If you've been trying to change your eating habits, but your underlying relationship with food needs healing, those those changes are unlikely to be sustainable. It's probably why you're jumping back and forth in and out, all or nothing, potentially, or just like not, kind of giving up and feeling frustrated. So first one, just like consider your relationship with food. Is that a step that you've been missing? And if so, start there. The next one is consider your experiences with dieting and diet culture. Are you in that dieting mindset? How heavily are you? You don't have to be a dieter to be impacted by diet culture.
That's a great point.
Which I think a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's really common for people to say to me like, wow, I never thought of myself as a dieter, but holy cow, I've been using a lot of these things from diet culture. So next is like evaluate your experiences in dieting and like the ways they may have detracted from your life. Next one would be like, just pause and think about, do you feel connected to your body? Do you know when you're hungry and actually honor the hunger? Or are you like in your head thinking, I shouldn't be hungry right now, or that's too many calories, or I can't eat right now. I'm not supposed to be eating until X o'clock. Do you know when you're full? Like, can you feel fullness and actually honor it? That would be another one. And then if you're someone who's like, I think I actually have a pretty good relationship with food, then I would start by just considering your current eating patterns. Do you see opportunities for tweaks, improvements, adjustments? Are there things maybe that you're doing that aren't serving you very well? Are there things you could be adding to your, I'm really big on, I don't like to focus, even when someone comes in with a health condition, most of the time, we can address it first and foremost by talking about foods and behaviors to add, not take away. And that's where I like to start. So I would suggest that, like, are there different types of foods or nutrients that you could be adding to your plate?
That's a great one. I've seen a few people, social media influencers recently talking about that, but I really do think it's a good one to have what you want, but add something healthy in there that maybe you wouldn't normally have with it. So I think that if you go along with that and add some extra protein, add an extra fruit, add an extra vegetable, it's always going to be a good thing to be focused on that additive and not depriving you from having what you really wanted in the first place. So I love that idea.
Yeah. Mindset is really powerful. Our thoughts lead to our feelings, which lead to our actions. And so if you're having trouble making changes that stick, probably go back to what your thoughts about it are and how those thoughts are making you feel, and then evaluating whether they're supportive of making changes, right? If the thoughts make you feel frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed out, guilty, deprived, whatever it is, none of those things actually probably promote you making supportive changes. So we got to go back and start with the thoughts.
Yeah.
Reframing the thoughts.
I think people don't realize how much your mind plays into it.
Totally.
It is so much more of a mind game than it is an actual like action of eating game.
Yeah. And also just that powerful shift, you read it in my bio, but it is something that I really live by. Are you trying to approach food through the lens of self-control? Like, I can only have this and I'm trying to force my body to be here. Or actually, are you looking at food and movement and sleep and stress management and how you talk to yourself as a way of caring for your body? Because for many people, it's actually not. We're looking at it through the lens of willpower and self-control and not realizing the impact that has.
100%. 100%. Great tips, great feedback. Thank you. As we wrap up, I will remind folks to check out the podcast, Wellness Rebranded, and to go on the website. We'll put your links out there. And this has been fabulous. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.